Oi oi, it's your boy, the Werner Jandaroba of banging down chicken yakisoba, Jack Slack, the Grandmaster General. And we're coming at you following an enormous weekend of UFC action. It was that ancien rivalry, England versus France, the 100 Years' War back again. Time is a flat circle. And of course, that all unfolded in the traditional arena of Abu Dhabi because they pay all the money. So doesn't matter if Tom Aspinall's getting over in the UK, he ain't defending his title there. And if he ever does, it's going to be at 4 a.m. I'll tell you what pissed me right off. Aside from the ending of this fucker, which pissed everyone off, what pissed me off was having to pay extra for this card. In the UK, there's a couple of different carriers. You pay for their dog shit channel for the year, and you get all the UFC events. And it used to be, oh, well, Conor McGregor's on this one, so we'll charge an extra 15 quid. And you'd go, well, it is Conor McGregor. And it is also my job. But now, I'm looking at this going, 20 quid for Mackenzie Dern versus Werner Jandaroba and possible 20-second main event? You're having a laugh. But then that was just a little window into what all of y'all in America have been experiencing for many moons. And you get a break from it soon. Main event was good until it was a disaster. Co-main was good if you forget the context of it and what it was supposed to be. As in, like, if you forget that these people are fighting for a world title, you're like, decent enough Invicta scrap. And then there was some other stuff. There were a few snoozers, few good knockouts, some interesting reffing and adjudicating, as always, in Middle Eastern events. But then some interesting ones in the other direction where a fighter stalling didn't get the points that he was supposed to, and a fighter cheating did get penalised immediately. So that was all really surprising. But let's not bury the lead anymore. Let's talk about that main event. Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane, UFC heavyweight title. Tom Aspinall, this man does not have the best luck in the world. He blew out his knee against Curtis Blades and had to take a year off. He had to wait for John Jones to decide that he definitely wasn't going to fight him to get the real title while defending an interim title. And this was at last for the unified, whatever it is, the undisputed UFC heavyweight title. He takes on Ciryl Gane. This was I felt like a lot of people tricked themselves into a bad read on this fight. I'm never going to claim that I always have a good read on fights. I've been completely wrong about a lot of fights. That's part of the gig. But I saw a lot of people lost in the sauce, convincing themselves that because Muay Thai Twitter had some clips of Ciryl Gane overextending on punches and being sloppy, that meant that he sucked ass completely. And that meant that Tom Aspinall was going to smoke him in seconds. Now, I wrote a big, long article you can go and read for free on fightprimer.com called The Unknowable Tom Aspinall. And I laid out all the stuff that is interesting about Gane and then all the stuff that weighs against that, all the bad habits he has, and then brought it all together by saying, so where in that bleak analysis is the test for Tom Aspinall? Gane has a terrific chin, throws at a good clip, and attacks the body better than any other heavyweight. If he can drag Aspinall into the second round and not already be dead on his feet like Arlovski, we will get some answers to questions most have their suspicions on already. A 250-pound man who moves as fast as Aspinall and with such power is rare, but it seems unlikely that first minute Aspinall is the same as third round Aspinall. How much of Aspinall's success is just his first round ability to teleport in on the opponent as they blink. In terms of game plan, Gane is probably best to try and maintain range and then duck into clinches when Aspinall enters. There is no point getting caught over the top of your jab in round one. If he wants to jab, he might stick to southpaw, which Aspinall doesn't see as much, and out of which Gane has a stiffer jab anyway. And the more Aspinall slows down and lingers out at kickboxing range, the more the jamming sidekicks to the lead knee are likely to hinder his blitzes. So this fight unfolded quite interestingly because my question, even if you thought that Ciryl Gane's striking does suck, which it doesn't, it has some problems, it's not all that it could be, but it definitely doesn't suck. Even if you thought it sucked, you could look at his fight with Francis Ngannou and know the fact that he was Francis Ngannou's training partner for all those big fights, and he was never knocked out by Ngannou, as far as we know. You'd think they'd bring that up in the promotion for their fight if he was. We know he's got a chin. And we know that his fights tend to go longer than most heavyweights because he's not a big one-punch hitter. And he has to outlast those other big one-punch hitters. So the question was always like, can he drag him a little bit later? And it was the same with Ronda Rousey, just the moment they got past that first couple of flurries, things started to get a lot more interesting, and Tom Aspinall started to sort of stand at range, and the sidekick and the southpaw jab started to become weapons, and it was just starting to look interesting. And I think as Gane threw his first body kick, he expected Aspinall to move in on it, and then he pushed Aspinall in the face, and both of his fingers went into each of Aspinall's eyes, and that was the end of the fight. No contest. Round 1, 30 seconds to go in the round. Really interesting round of striking. And now there's people going like, don't give Gane the rematch, don't try and do it again, move on. It's just like, well, we just got a really interesting matchup there. But then, Gane did jam his fingers in his eyes, and he'd already pushed his face twice before that with his fingers splayed. This is one of those things, I mean, we're always talking about the gloves. They changed the gloves last year, and people convinced themselves it was a design, like they'd redesigned them to mitigate the eye poke threat. And all of the marketing material presenting the new gloves, you could control F. There was fuck all about eyes, pokes, fingers, extension of the fingers, anything like that. It was not sold as that. They just wanted to redesign the gloves, which is a crazy move when people have been begging since like 2009. Dana White said, we're looking at changing the gloves. But then they tried those new gloves, everyone hated them, and also, like, possibly unrelated, the knockout ratio dropped for about 4 events in a row, and the UFC shat their pants and went, okay, back to the old gloves. The only indication that they did lower the instances of eye pokes, or the possibility of eye pokes, was that John Jones came out and said he didn't like them. By the way, if John Jones had done this would have been TKO first round, John Jones. They'd have been like, sorry, you got poked in the eyes, but if you can't continue, that's TKO due to eye injury. Or submission due to eye injury. Like Hickson Gracie used to get some of his old rear naked chokes called as TKOs if the guy didn't tap. But yeah, eye pokes, they continue to happen, they continue to fuck with the sport. And it does annoy me. There's people like Jim Miller who say it's always deliberate. It's on the fighter to keep their fingers out of the eyes. But then you get people saying, why are his hands there anyway? And I'm a huge fan of pushing off the face. I think it's fantastic. Pushing off the top of the head, pushing off the face. Love it in striking sports, love it in MMA. But I do think people are fucking slapdash about it. If the glove situation is what it is, and these pokes keep happening, and you are a victim somehow when you're putting your hands out there, a good one to look at is Adesanya. If you watch his fight with Brad Tavares, I think it's about 25 minutes. I'm not sure he even pokes him once, but he's constantly framing off Tavares' face. And the way that he does it is that if he's framing with his left hand, he turns his thumb down and his fingers are pointing off to the right side of Tavares' face, clear of his eyes. And if he's framing with his right hand, he turns his thumb down and he points his fingers to the left side of Tavares' face and makes sure that his palm is like across Tavares' forehead or nose. He really makes an effort to keep his fingers out of the guy's eyes. And I think the thing that annoys me about this is that once or twice earlier in this fight, Aspinall either faked a level change or tried to come in off a kick, and Gane shoved him in the face and shoulders, like he'd have one hand on the face, one hand on the shoulders, and he didn't jam his fingers in his eyes. And it's like, I can see what you were doing. And framing off people's heads and shoulders is legitimate. But if you poke him in the eyes, that ruins your chance at winning the fight. Like, you are going home with half the money now because you didn't win. Even if you don't factor in the fact that you didn't win the world title on like what is supposed to be your last attempt. And they're probably not going to give you another one. So do I think he did it maliciously? No. Do I think it was fucking stupid? Yes. You got to be real careful with that shit. If if it's part of your plan to push off his face if he grabs your leg, you've got to be watching your P's and Q's. There's talk about Aspinall like quitting or whatever. I do think he was getting frustrated in the last sort of minute and a half of the round. Gane was able to land with his southpaw jab a lot, opened up Tom's nose. Tom's nose was red as he was warming up, though. Like as he was bouncing around while they were after his warm up, but as he was bouncing around before the instructions, I was looking at him going, "Is his nose bright red?" And then it just got popped open by Gane late in this round. But it annoys me because I think we were on the verge of an interesting fight. Well, no, we were having an interesting fight. I think we were on the verge of something unexpected going on, or it was starting to happen, for a lot of fans at least. And Ciryl Gane might have just robbed himself of his finest hour. With that being said, they do the rematch. There's plenty of time for Aspinall to take that away and look at what went wrong for him. I did always think that I mentioned the southpaw thing for the southpaw jab, and because Tom Aspinall's really good at stepping down the inside of your jab, if you're orthodox, stepping down the inside of your jab with his jab and then throwing his right hand across the top. That's how he knocked down Blades with the jab off that and actually missed with the right hand because Blades was already falling. But with Pavlovich, it was the same thing. Step down the inside, right hand across the top of the guy's jab, blindsided him, knocked him down. Very hard to do that against a southpaw in the same way. And particularly because Aspinall wants to take a big step in and counter. And a lot of the time, the knees clash. The feet get in the way of each other. So you've got this little barrier there to entry, even if you're not doing anything as a southpaw against an orthodox fighter, or vice versa. But more than that, like, Aspinall throws his right hand not straight, but on an arc over the top against orthodox fighters. Against southpaws, you need to straighten it out. You're not gonna time it across the top of their jab. You might time it across the top of their left straight, but that's really like waiting on a particular counter. So he didn't actually. Did he land any? He threw a couple of right straights, but I didn't see him land any. And to be honest, I was going back through on slow motion because Gane takes a great shot, but I don't think he got hit that much in this fight to begin with. He was doing some stuff that I didn't like, though, like the high elbows and then ducking his head down. And I'm just looking at that going, well, Tom, you got 6 months to learn to flash your jab and throw a big Looney Tunes ass uppercut up the middle there. But Aspinall attempted a couple of takedowns and Gane was in good position to defend them. I mean, so much of that Gane loss to Jones. Yes, John Jones is a fantastic wrestler, but Ciryl Gane, in the opening minute of that round, he's dancing around Jones. Jones starts walking towards him. He's backing up, and he throws a step through left straight at a guy who wants to get on his hips and is walking towards him. It's an insane call. Even if you just threw the left straight, you're opening up your hips for the guy to drop on them. If you step through as well, and you're watching him walk forward, why are you stepping into him? Or through him, almost. Shifting is for when you think the guy's going to give ground. So complete misread on that and gave Jones the easiest takedown possible. Well, this is what we were talking about with like body punching for anti-wrestling and so on. If you put yourself in position, if you level change with the guy, if you put yourself in position to defend a shot and then he shoots, you've got a good chance, even if he's got a great wrestling pedigree. So much of wrestling at the highest levels is setups as much as it is finishes. You're not going to finish a dog shit shot. Unless you're Ben Askren. That was a lot of his wrestling style, was shooting bad singles and then pulling the guy in with his freakish strength. So yeah, I thought Gane's takedown defense actually looked good. It might have been good against Jones. It was literally his striking that made him, his choices in striking and his misreads gave an easy takedown. Because like takedowns in MMA, the really good ones are actually striking. It's actually just level changing underneath the guy's punches. So you just have to get the guy punching your head. All the pushing them to the fence and putting a knee in the middle and trying to like throw them over that way, that's like forcing a takedown to happen. If you're talking like timing a shot and just running through and easily taking top position or getting the guy's back, that is basically slotting your shot into a striking match. So will they do it again? Who knows? I really hope they do, but I don't know, man. It's one of those things like you get the sense the UFC, especially at this point, they got to be like, this is more trouble than it's fucking worth. But you can't just like not do heavyweights. It's like the most important division historically, and just for people who don't watch fights regularly. This company gave up on the lightweight division 20 years ago, and that always had some of the most exciting fighters in the world. So co-main event was a world title fight. Hard to believe, but it was, between Werner Jandiroba and Mackenzie Dern, rematch of a fight like 3 years ago. But it was the usual. You know, Mackenzie Dern is a grappler who cannot wrestle, cannot get a takedown to save her life. She has a decent jab from years of working with Perillo, and then the rest of her boxing is like wine mom swinging. And then Vina Jandiroba has the wrestling, but then would get top position and not know what to do. It was quite incredible, actually. She'd get top position, and I'm used to people not trying to pass the guard because, you know, the benefits of it aren't even that great in MMA. You can hit a guy just as well in half guard as you can, well, probably better from half guard than you can from side control. Most people can't hit very well from mount. Unless you're trying to submit them, there's not an awful lot of point climbing up the body. But you then got to do some striking, and Vina Jandiroba was just sat back behind Mackenzie Dern, like sitting on one leg behind Mackenzie Dern's top knee, getting punched from the bottom and losing like a boxing match with the other person on their back, and she's losing it. And at one point, she even stood up because she was getting beaten up from the bottom. It was truly dreadful. It was cool to see Mackenzie Dern use a bit of K-guard, and then she used a lasso. You know, we're talking about the no-gi lasso a lot in grappling at the moment, which is where you loop your foot over their arm and under their armpit, or you just loop your foot over their arm and put it on their shoulder. And she used that to get her feet in position to leg press off and get up. So that was cool. You know, it was a gritty performance. Dern was out there swanging and banging or trying to. It just wasn't very good, as in like the standard. And this was a really strong division, it seemed like at one point. This is women's strawweight, the one that's supposed to be good. You know, we know the other two aren't. It's just like, wow, okay. We've, you know, I think I said it last time, but feel so lucky to have had that era where Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Rose Namajunas, and Zhang Weili all overlapped. And you were going, wow, this division is really moving. You know, we're getting somewhere. Women's MMA revolution. And then we're just back to mid-ass middery. Invicta fight on a numbered UFC card. Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Batista. Do you know what's really funny? People were like, oh my God, they gave the decision to Volkov even though Jailton Almeida spent most of the time on top because Almeida did no damage. Brilliant judging tonight. And then Umar didn't do anything from top. He didn't threaten a submission. He didn't land any strikes. He got the back, but he didn't even really threaten a submission from there. And the judges gave it to him 3-0. The closest attempts on submissions were Batista trying to pop his foot off with a toe hold. And the closest attempt to finish with strikes was Batista knocking him down in the second round. But because Nurmagomedov was behind him for large portions, all three judges scored this 3-0 for Nurmagomedov. And that's kind of where we are in MMA. The shoot lot strategy is dominating, and it ain't the most fun in the world. But, you know, at least it was technically good, as opposed to the usual stalling. But, you know, Umar looking great. Striking looked a bit regressed. He only really looked for, from southpaw, the fade back and throw the left hand across the top of Batista's right. Batista looked a bit tentative on the feet because the first two exchanges on the feet, he came out, threw a body kick and immediately got taken down. Umar's answer to the body kick was really nice. He was parrying it basically behind the knee. He'd bring his hand down on the back of the knee and pull it in. I think I first saw that, it might have been Anderson Silva I first saw that from, but it's where normally if you were trying to parry the body kick, you would take it on the outside arm. You'd bring your other hand across normally to take the blow on both arms. And then you'd use that hand that's coming across the body to drag the foot down and across you. But by going up to the knee, you can pull the knee down, and it sort of puts their knee across you, but it also means that they can't run away. So then you can start trying to run up to their body and grab a hold of them. It's a good answer. If you think the guy's going to body kick you and you want to wrestle, parry behind his knee and just pull it across you. And their foot will get stuck on your arm rather than come across your body normally. But it gives you purchase, and Umar got several takedowns off that. I was tweeting in the second round, oh my fucking God, stop throwing body kicks. But he did hit him with a high kick, bending down, so maybe that's what he was looking for the entire time. Rare to see a good toe hold in MMA, though. And it did look like it was a nasty toe hold. I was trying to watch Nurmagomedov, how he moved coming out for the second. He looked like he was fine, but you never know, because who was it broke their ankle on this card? Oh, Ludovic Klein. I think it's been confirmed he broke his ankle. But he was fighting up until the end and then couldn't get off the ground. And you were like, when did that happen? When did you break your ankle? Had to receive the win on the stool. There was also a nice bit of arm crunch work from, or shoulder crunch work from Batista from the bottom. I just really didn't like his strategy of going out and throwing kicks above the waist right off the bat. When he body punched, it worked quite well, as I've been talking about quite a bit lately, but when he body punched and Umar tried to close in on him, he was actually pretty safe. Whole lot of climbing on the back and not doing a lot from there for Umar. I mean, that's the way it is. Like, the back is valued as the most important position in MMA because of where MMA started with the Gracies and so on. Even though the more you see it in the modern MMA, the moment the guy gets on the back, he might get the choke. But as soon as he's there, I think Josh Barnett used to say this years ago, but as soon as you've been on the back for like more than a couple of seconds, you aren't getting that choke, especially with big gloves on. And then if you aren't on top of the guy with him sprawled out and you striking, you actually can't strike from most positions when you're on the back. So someone was telling me like, oh, it's the most valuable position because you got submissions and strikes from there. It's like, no, you don't have any strikes and you got one submission and it doesn't work if the guy holds your gloves. But it is a nice position that you can sort of lock yourself into. So Umar slapped a body triangle on and it's like, that's going to take a lot of time to get out of, even though he's doing nothing. But this sets up Merab versus Umar too. So yeah, more of that. I really think they should have just done Umar versus Jan in the meantime, but whatever. Merab's going on his second lap through the division anyway. Volkov versus Almeida. I'm convinced that Volkov won this because the judges thought that he was from a different part of Russia. He did have the beard and no moustache as well, but Jailton Almeida did a lot of laying on top of him. I've been complaining about Jailton Almeida for a while. I've gone through several phases on this podcast. I saw him on the Contender Series and I was like, damn, a big man who can grapple. I really like that. And then I realized that in that Derek Lewis fight, if he gets on top of someone, he won't throw a strike. Like, he's terrified of throwing a strike. And all the best ground and pounders in MMA history have been guys who don't care if they lose a bit of position. If you watch Fedor or Khabib at their best, they will stand up from side control or go up to knee on belly or whatever. They'll pitch a bomb at your head. You'll maybe get a bit of guard back and they'll just throw it apart. They don't care. They'll do it again. And Jailton Almeida fights like it will be the end of the world if the guy gets his guard back or whatever. Like, it's just, he fights absolutely terrifying. He fights like he's going to be bridge and rolled. Like he's really worried about that happening if he throws a strike. And then, you know, ironically, he did get swept in a really low amplitude, shitty sort of way in the very first round. Volkov had the lockdown from half guard and Almeida sort of sat onto his side. And Volkov created this weird little sort of butterfly hook, but not really grapevine hook turnover that slowly got him on top. So he won that round by being on top. He landed a couple of elbows as Almeida was trying to go under for his Lucas Leite style coyote guard sweeps. We could get into the difference between deep half guard, traditional deep half guard, and coyote guard / Lucas Leite guard, or / the lower leg shift. There's about 10 names for it, but it's beyond our scope for today. It's real technical shit, but DC and Laura Sanko were saying some weird stuff on commentary. Laura Sanko was saying, like, normally he throws strikes and they give up their back. And I'm like, have you ever seen Jailton Almeida fight before? I did like Almeida's single leg with the head outside single into inside trip, because I've seen a lot of people do that, particularly guys from like Sander backgrounds, hit the inside trip off the single leg or off the kick catch, and they fall into the guy's guard with their arm across the body. So you basically just invite the person to get on your back from the bottom. Stamp Fairtex had an opponent do this to her really early on in her MMA career. You're like pulling the guy onto your back. But by keeping that foot upright, or that knee upright, the foot on the floor, as he does the takedown, and trying to stay standing. He didn't always stay standing. He sort of fell with it, but his leg was upright. Shin was vertical. Let's say that. Almeida made it so that Volkov couldn't go behind him. But then the second or third time he did this, Volkov just sat up and came up on a single of his own because that leg was up. Very funny seeing people after this be like, oh, Almeida sucks, and then worshipping Walter Walker. Almeida can style on that level of heavyweight all day. It's because in his last few, he's had to fight the only good heavyweights, and he looks like shit against them because he doesn't have a rounded game. He doesn't have anything else. Doesn't even have strikes from top position, so he's just going to hold you. But against guys like Louis Sutherland, he'll just submit them. The Walker-Sutherland fight was... I mean, Sutherland hasn't had an awful lot of experience. He's been doing this for like 3 years. He's just a big athletic dude. And he's got a lot of losses already. But the leg stuff... I'm watching Walter Walker do this, and he's getting guys with outside heel hooks from a standard sort of ashy position. So one leg in and one leg out, as opposed to like both legs out on the outside. And Umar Palhares used to do that, and then as they rolled, he'd free his legs and throw them both to the outside and finish it from there. If you don't throw your legs outside, the guy can just sort of keep rolling and pull your legs apart. Obviously, massive, massive dude, very, very strong. But if you don't have your feet locked together because one of them's inside his crotch, he can wedge something in there and start pulling your knees apart, because you need your knees pinching to be able to finish the heel hook. Any sort of foot locking stuff, if you can like put an arm in, put the other knee in, anything inside of their like thighs and knees, the loop that's made by them, and start opening that up, you take a lot of pressure off your knee. But I think Sutherland just hasn't seen a lot of this. And this is part of the thing with Walter Walker. There aren't going to be a lot of heavyweights who are training with other big heavyweights who can do any sort of leg locks decently. And big, strong dude who does one leg lock sequence over and over again is not like, I mean, it's not a bad thing. Umar Palhares, who was referenced during the broadcast, basically he was an MMA fighter in the UFC. He turned up at ADCC, which is the Grappling World Championships held every 2 years, and he ran through everyone except the best guy in the world with the same sequence over and over again. And he did it from everywhere. Like against David Avilan, David Avilan's in the turtle. Palhares is in the front headlock on top of him. Palhares runs around the side, grabs the ankle, and sits underneath him into the standard Ashi Garami single leg X, whatever you want to call it. Starts hitting the heel hook. Guy spins, frees his leg, and then what he does is like they sometimes call it a heel bar. But to escape but to take the pressure off the heel hook, guys will straighten their leg and roll, and Palhares would extend the knee over his hips as they did so. Go watch some Palhares. He was a monster. What else was good? Quillan, I don't know how this guy's name is said, Killan Salkild knocked out Nasrat Haqparast. What I did like about Haqparast, and I think I said this last time he fought, he used to have this thing where, because every time he attacks, he leads with the overhand left, constantly. It's either jab overhand left or just overhand left, and he leans forward at the waist. And he used to do that and then have to reel his left hand in like the plug on an old vacuum cleaner. But he's actually now, after 15 years of fighting, he throws his left hand, extending his stance, and then he immediately brings his left foot up afterwards. And that's done wonderful things for his boxing. He can now actually throw in combination because he's not just leaning and way out of position. Salkild shot a load of bad takedowns in this fight, which was very weird because he was a big, long striker, I thought, but attempted a load of takedowns. And this was something we were talking about the other week on the Boycast, where height and reach is a huge advantage in most things in striking and fighting generally. It does make you slower on the level change. You've got more ground, you've got more distance to cover to get underneath them and in on their hips. And Haqparast had no trouble just like matching levels with him every time he started level changing. But then Salkild threw up a head kick and bounced Haqparast off the mat. Really bad one. Like he did his celebration, they cut away for the break, they came back and he saw that Haqparast was in the same position on the ground. And he looked really worried. Because like everyone wants a highlight reel, smoked him, left him unconscious knockout. But nobody wants to kill someone. Like that's, it's the uncomfortable line we all walk with this sport. It's like how fighters can sort of overlook the fact that they are getting CTE even if they're winning. But man, it was a moment to see Salkild's eyes as he was sort of realizing that Haqparast might be badly, badly hurt. But as far as I've heard, Haqparast is okay. Alaskarov versus the Iron Turtle. Hard for Alaskarov to get his hype back after the Robert Whittaker loss. Even harder because he fought the Iron Turtle, who is a spoiler in the best sense. Like, he constantly walks forward. He's got good takedown defense. He's not a big hitter, but he does have voluminous boxing. He was doing this wonderful left hook to the body, right hand across the top, and he was catching Alaskarov dead to rights constantly, particularly as he backed onto the fence. So yeah, Park was making him look really bad, and Alaskarov was able to get just enough takedowns to take the pressure off. He was using the GSP double leg, which is quite nice, which is where you shoot your double leg and you use your chest on top of their thigh. You pick it up like a single, basically, in the crook of your elbow, and you use the chest pressure to sit them down, like you're running the pipe. And GSP used to do that, so you're taking them sort of the wrong way for a traditional double leg, and then as they hopped around, he'd grab the other leg and run them back the other way. If you watch his fight with Thiago Alves, he hits about 14 of those. Nathaniel Wood versus Jose Delgado, I enjoyed this a lot. A lot of people felt like Delgado should have won. I thought Delgado looked great in the first round. Wood pulled it back really nicely, second and third, but I would say those second and third were competitive. You could score that 3-1 for you could score that 3-0 for Delgado if you wanted to. First round was decisively Delgado's, but I was a little bit like, because Delgado came out and he stopped Haider Emil very quickly, and Haider Emil was on a good run, and I was just aware that this might be a sort of Sokoudjou situation. Ramon Thierry Sokoudjou was a light heavyweight. He got a short notice fight with Antonio Ruggiero Nogueira in Pride when Nogueira was in the top 10 in the world, and he knocked him out very quickly because there was like no footage of Sokoudjou. No one knew anything about him, and everyone went, oh, well, that must have been a fluke. And so then he got Ricardo Arona, who was another top 10 guy, and he knocked him out in seconds as well. And you're going, wow, he must be the real deal. And then the more fights he had, the more it became apparent that like he was decent, but not that good. He was benefiting enormously from being unknown and catching these guys cold. He also had horrible cardio. If you went past that like opening minute, he just looked dreadful. But I was worried that might be the case with Delgado. We were getting a little bit of like a Sokoudjou moment where he wasn't as good as that last fight made him look. And honestly, he looked really good in this one. I love that. I mean, he almost caught Wood with the exact same thing he caught Emil 3 or 4 times in this fight. He's very good at throwing his hands, not convincingly, because he's actually hurting people, but he's throwing his hands and he throws them in combination enough to get the guy ducking. And then the right knee just comes up real quick. Like he's not putting any power on it. He's just bringing it up to where you're going to move to, and you duck down onto it. And that's how he got Emil. But he came real close to scalping Nathaniel Wood with that 3 or 4 times in this fight. But Nathaniel Wood is tough as nails and a vet, and he really did pull himself back into this well. He's shorter than everyone he meets at featherweight, but he still manages to out-jab them a lot of the time, which is crazy to watch. I'd have liked to see him go to the clinch more, particularly when he was hurt. There was a lot in that first round where I was going, man, you need to clinch. Just, why are you trying to stand on the end of his range where you're getting kicked? And then he went back to his corner, and Brad Pickett was brilliant because he said, when he's southpaw and he throws the high kick, we can't do anything with that. He said, throw back the inside low kick off the other side. But what he meant was like, you see this all the time when guys work it out, like Islam Makhachev versus Volkanovski 2. Between fight 1 and fight 2, he realized, oh, he's half a foot shorter than me. If I stand on the end of my leg reach and just throw high kicks at his arm, good chance he ducks onto it, good chance he steps into it. If he doesn't, he just gets beaten up. And, you can take a kick on one arm and it'll bounce off your head anyway. I think that happened to Hakparest. If you're going to block a kick, you've got to go 2 hands. Ideally, I would like to see more people bringing up their shin as well, but obviously in MMA, you can't be getting on one leg for everything. Which is why you got to punish kicks more. But if you're half a foot shorter than him, very hard to get in on him off the high kick. I do think Nathaniel Wood has deserved a ranked opponent for a long time because he got robbed in that fight against Mohamed Naimov, where Naimov just cheated his ass off. This was a close fight, and he really did get the lucky decision here, but I think they definitely should put him in with someone, because he could beat someone like Danny Ige. At least I feel like he could beat someone like Danny Ige. I think Jose Delgado could beat Danny Ige. No disrespect to Danny Ige, it's just like the top 10 of featherweight. There are a few guys hanging around who I think are not as good as some of these up-and-comers. What is Brian Ortega ranked at right now? Because he shouldn't be. Hamdi versus Chris Barnett. This was just, it summed up the heavyweight situation altogether. If your pay is the equivalent of a hot dog and a handshake, don't expect world-class athletes. However, I saw someone point this out. Chris Barnett used to actually make up for being a big fat dude who shouldn't be a heavyweight by actually being pretty athletic. But he's blown out his ACL a couple of times in the last few years, and he just looked bad. He was able to get up, and Hamdi looked bad by extension, but man, this looked like Tank Abbott versus Scott Ferozzo 2, the one that they booked when they were old men in a backyard, and it was just the saddest shit you've ever seen. It was like the film Knuckle about the Irish traveller boxing, where the guy who's making the film, he ends up filming two granddads fighting in front of a load of people. And in the voiceover, he goes, "This is the closest I came to just giving up on this project. I was really depressed." Hamdi getting a takedown, and then Chris Barnett crawling his way up with his whole ass on show. Desperate shit. Mitch Raposo versus Azat Maxim was okay. Was decent. They were flyweights. They did their part. Well, I say they were flyweights. It was 129 this was at because someone missed weight. Maxim. I mean, that makes sense because he was massive. But this one, firstly, shout out to my boy Rich Mitchell, who consistently is a very good referee. Azat Maxim pulled himself out of a position with one hand on the fence, and he did it real quick. But Rich Mitchell went, "No, you're changing the position. I'm taking a point right now." And everyone online was like, "Oh my God, they're taking points right away." And it's like, yeah, well, you should in that instance, definitely. But Rich Mitchell is consistently a pretty good ref. I get that refs don't want to impact the fight, but you do have to make your presence felt. Because if you don't, they'll just act like you're not there. Because effectively you aren't. If you're someone like Mark Goddard or Herb Dean and you're going, "Come on, I've warned you about the eye pokes 4 times. I'm going to have to give you a hard warning." But the other thing was Raposo was landing these good overhands. The old Juan Manuel Marquez overhand did it against Manny Pacquiao, left him slumped on his face. If you start retreating, especially if you've set this up by retreating a few times previously, you retreat away from the guy, you drop, you change levels, you sink down deep in your stance, and you throw real high overhead. You want to get your head like below their chest, basically, so that when you throw overhead, it hits them over the top, and you smash them with their head up in the air. And Raposo was doing this really well. Louis Sutherland did this to Walter Walker, and it was beautiful, the right hand. And then he immediately stands up out of his stance to throw a left hook, and Walter Walker stays low and gets in on his hips. Runs through on an easy-ass takedown. It's like you started in a low stance where you could wrestle well, and the excitement of going for the left hook, you came up. But yeah, Raposo's overhanded that fight good. And then Mizuki Inoue came back after, I think she's been away for about 3 years. I said this on the boycast, but she had a fight with Alexa Grasso back in Invicta. That was 2015. And everyone went, "Wow, that's a high-level fight. Those girls had good striking. They're going on to big things." And obviously Alexa Grasso won a UFC title. And Mizuki Inoue had a couple of fights in the UFC, but massive breaks. A year between her first and second fight, then 3 years, and then another 2 years. So she's had a lot of trouble. And honestly, this looked like Korean necromancy. She looked great. she survived this really tall, lanky girl's grappling. She clearly was a bit of a specialist, and then beat her up on the feet in the moment she got the chances, beat her up in the clinch. Ironically, it was Inoue who had a massive cut open on her head by an elbow or something like that, but she was the one roughing up Amarin. Amarin was pulling guard by the end because she kept getting her whole shit rocked by uppercuts and so on. But yeah, good to see Inoue back and not looking like she's got no ACLs left. Which a lot of fighters do. It happens. Guys will just go away for a year, and you'll go, well, they can graft death row inmates' ACLs onto yours now. Long gone are the days when that would be a career ender. And it really is case by case. Some guys lose an ACL, get the surgery, do the rehab, and they look like they never lost a step. And other guys, it's like you cut the heart out of them. They just don't got it anymore. Anyway, speaking of don't got it anymore, that was the UFC. That was UFC 321, whatever it was. 321, detonate. That's it, over. What the fuck is going on next week? Oh, I think we're entering the period of main events where people were like, "What is this bullshit main event?" But I was going, low-key, actually, I quite like that. Steve Garcia versus David Onama. I like that fight. No one's going to tune in and listen to me talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it because I like it. And then other various shit on that card. Oh, and then the one after that is Gabriel Bonfim versus Randy Brown. Fuck me. That is genuinely a bad fight. Gabriel Bonfim scraped past the ghost of Wonder Boy. And they're like, well, I suppose you're in the main event now. Anyway, I'm your boy Jack Slack. Go read the Tom Aspinall article, because if they do the rematch, all the same shit applies, and it's free. And if you want to get on all the extra stuff I do, sign up to the Patreon, support the podcast, be a boy. I'm your boy Jack Slack, and I will catch you later in the week if you are a Patreon boy. Tom Aspinall telling off the crowd, and them all going kind of quiet because he's a scary man. Bless.